Well, good day, everybody. Welcome back to the channel and the Typewriter video series. This is Joe. Today we have a shorter video. We're going to talk about justifying text when you're typing, and specifically how to do center justification. Stay tuned. Well, this topic of center justification came up recently because I've been working on my cold hard type short story project. If you're not familiar with that, this is a crowdsourced short story project of Dr. Richard Pultz, and it involves the typewriter in a post-digital world. I'll leave a link below if you're interested in getting involved in that. But what I wanted to do was to center my title and the my name at the top of the page. So you can kind of wing it. You can kind of approximate what you think is centered, and I've done that a lot over the years, especially with my blog, where I'll commonly just throw a title down, not really left justified, but just somewhere in the middle, and then I'll start typing, and then after I get done with my column of text for my blog, I realize, oh, that title isn't really centered. It's way off to the left or way off to the right. I should have center justified it. It's not difficult to do. Before we talk about center justification, let's just mention there's generally like 4 different kinds of justification you can do for text. The first kind of justification is kind of what we do normally with typewriters. It's left justification. You do a carriage return all the way back to the left margin, and you start typing, and then when you get near the right margin, at some point you're going to do a carriage return. All the text on the left side of the page is justified, lined up straight, whereas the text on the right side isn't. That's left justification. You don't have to do anything to figure out how to do left justification. Just do your normal typing and it ends up that way. There's 3 other kinds of justifications, though, that are a little harder to do on a typewriter. First of all, there is full justification. Now, full justification is when you have both left and right margins are even. And with manual typewriters that are usually monospaced fonts, meaning that all the characters are the same width. So you could think of the typewritten page as a grid. The vertical spacing is your line spacing, and the horizontal spacing is actually the star wheel of the escapement mechanism in the typewriter itself that determines the horizontal spacing of the characters. And so all the letters in a monospaced typewritten font are in a grid pattern. They're evenly spaced. So that includes the spaces themselves are the same width as any of the other characters, right? So in order to fully justify text with a typewriter, you basically have to pad out your spaces between words. You have to add extra spaces in there to make both left and right margins even. And it's kind of a complicated procedure because you have to type a rough draft, figure out how many extra spaces to add, and then retype a final draft with the justification in place. Our topic today is not full justification. Our topic is center justification, and this is where each line is centered in the middle of the page. So if you can think of a column of verse, the verses to a song or a poem are often center justified. That's what we're going to do today. Okay, to do center justification, we're going to do it in essentially a 2-step process. So what we do first of all is you load the paper in the machine, get it straight. Then you have to find the physical center of the paper. And we're going to do that with simply looking at the paper scale on the typewriter carriage, figuring out the left and right edges of the paper and finding the halfway point. And that's real easy. Then knowing the center of the paper, setting the carriage to that position, and then we're going to find the beginning point of the typed line with a real simple process. And that'll center justify the text on that line. Okay, let's talk about the first step we have to do, which is to find the center of the paper. So I'm going to use a letter-sized sheet of paper, and I'm going to thread it into this Remington Quiet Writer, and I'm going to try to do it backwards. I'm not used to that. We have a second camera right up here. Wave to the camera. Hi. Okay, so I want to find the left and right edges of the paper, and what I've done here is I have started threading. This is a full-size sheet of paper, letter-size sheet of paper, and I've threaded it so that the left edge of the paper is at the 0 point. Okay, which means all I need to do is look at the right hand edge of the paper at the paper scale, and it is adjacent to, let me get up here and read it, 85. So to know the halfway point of the paper, we simply take 85 and divide it in half, and that's, let's say, 43. That's going to be the midway point of our typewriter paper, and you want to set the carriage to 43. And on this particular Remington, you not only have a paper scale up behind the paper behind the platen, but you also have a lower scale on the carriage down below the printing position, and you can reference that and set it to your 43 position. Like that. If, on the other hand, you're using a non-standard sheet of paper, let's say a thinner piece of paper. Let's say I took a piece of paper like this and folded it in half, and I'm going to type on it like this. Typically, I advise people to, if you're using a narrower sheet of paper, thread it in the middle of the platen. That way, the pressure rollers underneath the platen will grip the paper more evenly, and it's more likely to thread itself through the machine straight without getting wonky and crooked. And so just go ahead and thread the paper up. You don't have to worry about the margins exactly right now for this purpose. It doesn't really matter where you put it, somewhere in the middle of the carriage. Now, all I've done is I've straightened out the paper so the edges are neat here, right? It doesn't matter where it's at per se. Now, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to look and see what the left and right edges of the paper are. And in this case, though, the left side is not 0. In this case, the left side starts at 16, and the right margin ends at 70. So 16 to 70. Now, to find the halfway point of the paper, it's real simple. Yes, we're going to use the abacus. So, or you can use a calculator. So 16, 6, plus 70 is 86. And then we're going to divide it in half. And so half of 80 is 40, half of 6 is 3, so 43 is going to be the halfway point. And so I want to set my margin, my printing position, I should say, to 43. And again, this Remington has a 43, a lower scale down there, 1, 2, 3. And if you have tabs on your machine, you can do a tab set. So go ahead and just set your tab at the middle position. And so now if you're off somewhere else, you can just tab over to the middle position and you're centered on the piece of paper, which is where we're at now. The second step of justifying is now you're going to find the backspace key on your typewriter, and on this one it's over here on the left side. So I'll probably be using my left hand if I was sitting normally. So what you want to do, put your finger on the backspace key. Now, you have a line of text that you're going to be typing, and you're either going to be referring to it from a book or a sheet of paper, or you're going to be just typing it from memory. I'm going to be typing the quick brown fox. And so what you're going to do here now is you're going to press 1 time for every 2 characters. And when I mean characters, not only letters or numbers, but also punctuation and spaces count, right? So for every 2 characters, press the backspace key once. So the quick brown fox, TH, E space, QU, IC, K space, BR, OW, N space, FO, and X. So that puts us in the position now where if we type that sentence, the quick brown fox, upside down, that you will find the text is center justified on the paper. It is nicely centered, the quick brown fox. Boom. That's all you have to do. This technique of center justifying text was well known back in the heyday of the typewriter, and it's probably listed in a lot of those typing instruction books. But for the use in the office, a lot of secretaries and typists were using standard width sheets of paper like 8.5 inch wide in America or A4 size in other parts of the world. And oftentimes, you would set the paper guide at the 0 point on your carriage scale, and when you thread a sheet of paper up against that guide on the left side, the right side margin is always going to be at the same point. And so what the secretary would do is she would calculate once what the center point of the carriage is for that width of paper, and put either a pencil mark on this paper scale here, or even take a fingernail polish a brush and just put a little dot of fingernail polish maybe on that scale to mark it permanently. Then the next time she went to thread a standard sheet of paper into the typewriter, she naturally threads it up against the left paper guide, and so the paper is physically situated so that dot or mark placed on the carriage is automatically in the physical center of the paper. So there's no need to do this calculation again. It's already been preset in the machine. You load your paper up, center it up, the left edge is even with 0, and then if you want to do center justified text like the title or heading of a letter or whatever, boom, all you have to do is tab over. She would even record a tab setting for that center position, right? So tab over to that middle position, and then backspace one time for every 2 characters in your line, and start typing. Boom, simple as that, real easy. And I recommend you guys try this. It's a real handy way to center justify your text. Another little trick from back in the heyday of the manual typewriter. Well, I hope this was helpful to you guys, gave you a little bit of confidence that you can easily sit down and do something like write poetry, write verse in a way that would look nice, in the way that verse or poetry is often done in poetry books. Well, this is Joe Van Cleve. Hope you enjoyed this. Leave any comments down below, and stay creative, and have yourselves a great day. Bye-bye for now.